Hey, welcome back, everybody. Once again, this is Mark Lawrence, and we're all set to go against the spread for what we hope to be another exciting week in the National Football League. College football is well underway. We've had a lot of controversy brewing in both sports. With that, before we get into the show, I'd like to welcome our panel, our cast of experts joining us from Las Vegas, the legend himself, Jim Feist. Jim, how are you doing these days?
I'm doing wonderful. Actually, we had a real good show at Dom DeMarco's yesterday.
Nice.
Chipper and Paul Scott Pritchard were on. It was great. And the first time ever, we had so many people, there were no seats.
Really?
Yeah, it was really, it gotten a lot of traffic, and it's becoming, people are popular and people want to be on. And now we got more people than we can possibly sit down.
Now we can see that here on the Proline TV network.
Well, yeah, Greg, we broadcast that live, right, Greg?
Yeah, it's a broadcast live both on Proline TV and the Dom DeMarco's channel. They have their own YouTube channel, so we get to air it on both channels simultaneously.
And Jim, I'm still willing to bet that Al did not run out of food.
You're right.
Andy Isco, speaking of food, my guy in Vegas, he knows all the good restaurants. I can tell you that.
And some of the bad ones, too.
And some of the bad ones. Have you been back to Craft Kitchen since I've been there, Andy?
I have not, but I am looking forward to it sometime in the next week or so. Now that
I gotta bring something up.
Plate.
What's that, Jim?
I know you, Andy, and you, Mark, know Matt Yeomans.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
He produces this report. It's extensive. It's about these fast food places.
Yes.
He has ratings. He talks about them, the different dishes. I mean, this is like an hour show.
Yes.
I mean, it's a whole big report. I can't believe it, how intense and in-depth this is.
I think they do that every year, sometime in the early to mid-summer. And I know
think he said he doesn't want to do it anymore. It's too much work. That's what
there was a time, guys, when fast food was cheap food, but that's not so much the case anymore.
No.
Not so
now
much.
It's fast food and slow service.
And slow service, exactly right. And keep reaching for your wallet. Greg DePalma, producer, Prime Sports Network. How was your day and was your week last week?
Very good. Unusual that when I did my college football picks, that I actually hit my top 2 picks, but didn't hit any upsets. That's unusual. It's usually the other way around. So I have to get those upsets back going again. I think I will this week. There's some good upset plays this week in college football and the NFL. So I can't wait to talk about that later.
Well, we're going to do just that. We're going to talk about that. I want to remind everybody out there watching and listening to hit that subscribe button. Do us a big favor, if you will, hit the like button as well and ring the bell while you're down there and do just that. We would really, really greatly appreciate that. All right. First thing we want to do here before we get the show going here is I want to ask each of you guys, you specifically, Jim, to kick things off. What is on your mind in the National Football League? And if it was a theme for this week, what would your theme be for the NFL this week?
This past week or this current?
This week coming up.
Well, I don't want to go to I'm going to go to the marquee game, of course, is the Eagles at the Chiefs.
Yeah, we'll hit that. Yes, right.
Yes, that's one I think we have to talk about. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to analyze it, but that's a big game. Then I think you have to look at the team that just beat the Chiefs, the Chargers coming to the Raiders, and that's big for us people in Las Vegas. Not that we're fans, but we'd like to see the Raiders do well, of course. And then you got the controversies about the coaches on the hot seat, which to me is number 1 is McDaniel and number 2 would be Daboll. Those two situations look pretty pathetic at this point. And I make McDaniel number 1 to go and Daboll number 2.
Their 2 teams combined for a whopping 14 points last week.
Oh, that's good.
The primary reason I would make McDaniel number 1, I'm down here in South Florida, and I can sort of see right through what's going on there. Number 1, he continually gets out-coached in the second half of football games, although last week he was out-coached from the get-go in that football game.
He was out-coached during warm-ups.
And really what his Achilles heel is, he cannot beat winning teams. He's just pathetic against teams that don't have a losing record. That's where all of his wins come from, and all of his losses are on the other side of that equation. And it can't continue that much longer for Miami. You got
Too
the
much
Tyreek
talent.
Hill situation going on there. It's just a total mess down there.
Mark, what's his history? Wasn't he the offensive coordinator for San Francisco? Was that?
Yes, he was.
Now, he did a pretty good job there to get this head coaching job. But a lot of times these offensive and defensive coordinators don't really elevate to the head coaching position that well. Because it's a whole different kind of job.
Wade Phillips, North Turner, two great examples of Wade Phillips defense and North Turner offense. Outstanding coordinators. Josh McDaniels, another one who's excellent as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's the classic case of the Peter principle. It affects more of these assistant coaches than anybody.
You know, that book, you and I, Mark, read that book like, 40 years ago?
Yes, inside and out, yes.
There's a lot of people out there that aren't even that old.
What was it? Lawrence Peters, I think was his name, who wrote the book.
Remember we were talking about it on Monday, Jim, and I don't know if you guys noticed it, but the first time they had a shot on the sidelines of Anthony Weaver, I swear, I was like, hey, The Rock. He looks like The Rock to me.
He can.
And he is so different. You take a look at a snapshot of Anthony Weaver on the sideline and McDaniel, and they're complete opposites. And
McDaniel looks 16 years old.
Yeah, and that is why Anthony Weaver is going to be the next head coach. Because they are going to elevate him to head coach, and he is going to change the culture of that program. And that is a needed change. They need to be tougher, more physical, because when you get off the bus, you want to see Anthony Weaver come off the bus first, not Mike McDaniel.
That's a spot-on call, Greg. He's really, really well liked in that locker room, and he's really, really knowledgeable as well. And I think you're spot on with that. I would make him the favorite.
Well, that would be great. I mean, just to make that change. I hate to see the way the Dolphins have deteriorated over the years. It's horrible.
Well, and I hate to see Mike McDaniel when he talks after a game. My goodness. I mean, I don't know. They had to give him some schooling on how to address the press. He's just absolutely in his own world, and his team seems to play just like that as well.
And sometimes he seems to have been watching a different game than we were watching.
Yes,
and Mark, you asked me about what from last week. I wanted to talk about the Bears and the Vikings, not necessarily the teams, but the quarterbacks. J.J. McCarthy in the fourth quarter looked like, I don't know. He looked like a world beater. He was incredible in the fourth quarter.
Right.
But Caleb Williams, this is his second year. He just doesn't look like he's in charge of the offense. He doesn't seem to know what he's doing.
I've sort of felt that way when he won the Heisman Trophy that year. He was a lot of braggadocio. He didn't need a PR man. He said it all about himself, and he's never really delivered the goods.
Wilson in waiting.
Yes, right. Now, it's only one game. It's a new head coach, Ben Johnson, a new offense, and maybe you got to give them a little bit of a longer leash, the Bears, and maybe even Caleb Williams. But J.J. McCarthy, you saw what exactly he can be in that football game last week. They got something special there, I really, truly believe.
It was an incredible performance in the fourth quarter. Unbelievable.
Yes, it was.
And that was the difference, too, between J.J. McCarthy if he would have been starting last year as a rookie. That never would have happened. That's why I think it is so much better for these young quarterbacks. And I know he would have started last year if he wasn't injured, but I just think it's so much better if these quarterbacks, these rookies, just sit a year.
That was the situation. 30, 40 years ago, you would always say a guy like Elway or whomever would sit and learn for a year, or at least a better part of the first season. Now they're being paid so much money, there's so much exposure, and there's so many expectations riding on a highly drafted quarterback that they're almost forced to, or just the fan base would revolt.
Another great point, Andy. You see, it's like they're like fine wine. The longer you let them grow older, marinate. That's a great word, marinate. The better they become. Ask Aaron Rodgers what that's all about when he sat behind Brett Favre for the longest time. But he was patient.
Maybe we're seeing the same thing about Jordan Love, who seems to be
that's right.
into his own.
That's right, Andy. Right, exactly.
And check these stats out. McCarthy, the first starting quarterback who led a 10 or more point fourth quarter comeback in his NFL debut since, and this happened in 1985.
Aaron Rodgers, right?
No.
Dan Marino? No, it wasn't Dan Marino.
This was another classic soon to be NFL Hall of Fame quarterback who sat behind an NFL Hall of Fame quarterback.
Soon to be, okay. Soon to be is the
Well, because he was on the
Would that have-
field.
would that
He
have been
couldn't be
Steve Young?
Steve Young, 1985.
Okay. Right.
And McCarthy also the first player in NFL history to have 2 10 or more yard passing touchdowns and 10 or more yard rushing touchdown in the fourth quarter of any game, and the first player in NFL history to score 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter of their first NFL game.
Why
No,
is Steve Young not in the Hall of Fame?
The Steve Young thing. Remember, he played for what was it, the LA?
I thought he was
Express,
in the
I
Hall
think.
of Fame.
I thought he was too.
Yeah, he's in the
Yeah,
Hall
I
of
thought
Fame,
he
isn't
should
he?
be.
Steve Young?
You mean he's not? I thought he was in too. He's not in?
Yeah, when I was saying, soon to be, I meant in 1985.
Oh, okay. From that point forward. Okay.
Yeah. He would
Oh,
be,
here's a stat for you. We also probably watched the Ravens and the Bills game, which was 41-40 at the end of the
Miami,
Buffalo won the
I
game.
believe.
Now
First time
this
they
is
scored
I
ever.
didn't know this, but I always wonder, why does this team always lose in the end again, big games, which is Baltimore. So this person that I know read me this article that was in Baltimore, one of the papers there printed this, that the Bills, not the Ravens lead the NFL all time in losing fourth quarter double-digit leads. Under
we
Harbaugh.
talked about that on Monday. That was from
Yes.
the Russell Street Report article that we went over. Yeah.
So
That
that's
was
Harbaugh's
amazing.
Achilles heel, blowing.
Well,
fourth
he
quarter leads.
gets too conservative. He actually plays not to lose instead of to win. And I mean, your highest paid player, your best player on the field, should be doing something. And how do you kick the ball to a guy you haven't been able to stop all game?
Not only that, but the other night is they had that lead, and yet the best player, or maybe the second best player on the field, was the one who made the fumble that allowed the Bills to get back in it.
Well, Jim, when I asked you about a theme and what we saw last week, I think my theme would be how many blown leads did we see by teams late in football games that had not only the game but the number in hand, lost the game and lost the money as well. It was just unbelievable how they just kept falling out and falling apart.
Another theme would be, I agree with you, another theme would be the kicking. How
Yep.
many games were lost by the kicker?
Yep.
Yeah, except the Jet game, of course,
Of course.
where the guy kicks a 60-yarder.
Yeah, field.
Right.
Of course.
Well, how about that Tampa Bay Atlanta game where Atlanta rallies to make it? I think it was 2017 or whatever it was. Tampa Bay scores to go up 23-20, and they missed the extra point, which gave Atlanta the opportunity to miss a tying field goal that would have made it 23-23.
And of course, our favorite team, Cleveland.
There you go. I wasn't going to mention it, Jim, but I'm glad you
I mean,
did.
they should have won that game.
Extra
Absolutely.
points.
I mean, they
And
beat
they
them over
outplayed
100 yards.
Cincinnati in every way except for the kicker.
Exactly.
Mark, my theme from last week is going to be very simple. I know you had something coming. You were going to have a line of mine in a few moments. It's just sort of related to it, and that is week number 1 in this college and pro football raises more questions than they answer. In fact, they answer very few questions other than, is this guy able to play? We don't know if week 1, let's use Miami and Indianapolis as an example. We don't know if Indiana played what's going to be its best game of the year. We don't know if Miami played its worst game of the year, or if what we saw on Sunday in most of these games, it wasn't a typical game that they're going to play. In other words, and it sort of relates to the thing that I also say, you don't want to overreact to what you saw last, but you also don't want to fail to react. You want to take notes to see, and you won't know that until you have the context of 2 or 3 more games to be able to put into the proper context what we saw in week 1, because it's so often week 1 is the one week throughout the year that we remember what we saw first about the team. That's the debut of the 2025 season. That sticks in our mind. We may remember a little bit about what week 2 and week 5, but we'll still go back because week 1 is the one that often forms our initial impressions. And we have to be prepared.
You're spot on with that, Andy.
We have to be prepared to
I
sometimes
know
that means we're wrong and change them.
in my database, I know the most reactive situation is reversals of what happened in week 1 in the National Football League to week 2.
Yeah.
You find football teams that come out with big monstrous blowout wins, come back to the pack. Like vice versa, teams that took the big lump come back to the pack as well. Things tend to even out real quickly in the National Football League from week 1 to week 2. So the message there being, don't put everything that you saw last week into a basket this week.
You know, there was
Good
a
advice.
game that Jim and anybody else that made the early wager. This is why early wagers can be very effective when you make them like 2 months before the season begins. And Jim made a very big investment on the Denver Broncos over Tennessee, and I believe the line was what at the time, Jim?
I don't remember.
5.5 or
5.5
6.5.
6. Yeah, it was up right in that range.
Yeah.
By
By game time,
it ended up. That's
And it was
for
there,
sure.
and it was there for most of the summer, by the way.
Right.
and then by game time on some sports books, it went up to 8.5.
Right.
And the game was 8. So if you wound up taking 8.5 on game day, you lost. But if you took it 2 months ago because you saw you know foresight and all,
if you're late,
you wound up cashing. Yeah.
Well, there's another thing you could point out, and we always have to deal with this: injuries. San Francisco, I don't know what the hell's going on out there. They're drinking the wrong water.
Man.
Everybody is always hurt. I mean, and now they have no Purdy and they have no Kittle. And they're not going to even be there for like 3, 4, 5 weeks. And then you look at one of the games we're going to talk about a little later. We got Philadelphia didn't have Carter. So not having Carter, who puts all the pressure on the quarterback coming up the middle, which is kind of, he's really good. He didn't play at all. So did that make Dak Prescott look better than he actually is?
To some extent, yes, but Philadelphia in their secondary, they had some issues that were able to be exploited. Now, how much of that had to do with the lack of pressure, with the absence of Carter, we don't know. We'll learn a little bit more about Dallas this week. May not learn all that much more because they're playing the Giants, who have a lot of issues, but we may learn a lot more about whether or not Kansas City has success against a defense that now will be led by Carter, but which still has some vulnerabilities.
Well, guys, let's take it into the top 3 games on tap in the National Football League this week. And we're going to wrap it up with the big game. As Jim mentioned, the Eagles taking on the Chiefs in that Super Bowl rematch. But let's set the table with the first game, the Bills and the Jets. We saw a lot of some that we liked, some that we didn't like last week. And because it's the New York Jets, Greg, I'm going to hand it off to you. Your comment on the Bills and the Jets this week.
Well, this is actually, I thought really long and hard about it since I'm a fan, but I trust my history of not being biased, and I just said, hey, if I'm not a fan, I really love the game anyway, and I'm going with it. And this is actually one of my favorite plays of the week. I love the fact that the Jets are getting almost 7. I'm very familiar with this rivalry in the Meadowlands the last 3 years. The Jets were a ridiculous favorite last year over the Bills, if anybody can remember that. And this was like week 4 or 5. But this was the whole ridiculousness of Aaron Rodgers being favored so many times last year. They were favored over the Bills by like a point, but they lose by 3. Okay. The 2 previous years, they're big dogs at home, and they won both games. So the last 3 times the Jets have hosted the Bills, they lost one game by 3. They won the other 2 as big long shots, upset dogs. And Josh Allen did not play good in any of them. Josh Allen does not have a good history of playing well away against the Jets. Throw in the fact that they're coming off the emotional, like historical type win that they had against Baltimore, knowing that they've got a Thursday night game to prepare for in a few days. There is no way the Bills are going to have the emotion, the energy. They just can't. That doesn't mean they won't win. Doesn't mean they can't win. But on the flip side, as long as the Jets played the way they did against Pittsburgh, and that's a big if, but as long as they do, I can't see how this game isn't going to at least be a really close football game. And that's why I love taking 6.5 or 7.
Well, Jim, we know Buffalo is not going to be looking past the Jets a division game, even though they do have that Thursday game, a great point that Greg brings out. But the fact of the matter is, can they get back up to the level that they prepared themselves for that Baltimore game and then escaped with the victory, stole it right at the very end? Emotionally, Jim, what do you think Buffalo's psyche is going into this game?
I love your points, and what Greg said, I totally agree with him. I thought the Jets played well enough to beat Pittsburgh, and honestly, I thought they were going to win, but that 60-yard that field goal was pretty amazing, actually. But the Jets played well. I like Glenn as a coach. I love the way, I thought Fields played very well. And we know that he can get yards on the ground. And Buffalo, even though they have a fantastic offense, their defense is still suspect to me. I got a home dog. The odds makers opened this thing 8.5.
Mhm.
8.5 on the road.
Division game.
So now it's 6.5 everywhere. With the juices to the higher, so it's 6.5 minus 15. So you're looking at the possibility of easily getting a 7. I got to take the Jets. I love the Jets in this spot.
I agree 100% with you, Jim. This is a kind of a football game that was made for the New York Jets, and you couldn't have asked for a better scenario or a better situational setup. Andy, what do you think happens here between the Jets and the Bills this week?
I'll tell you in a moment, but I want to first of all thank you for the copy of the log and stat book that Colleen did a tremendous job in packing and tremendous information. I would recommend this. It's well worth the price. It has so much information. For example, and this is something that we all do as handicappers. Well, what's the history of this series? Well, you go right here. You don't have to scramble through pages. You have 10 years of results, team by team, and every team that the Bills are going to face. So, for example, you go and see the Jets, and you can see that Buffalo against the Jets is 13-7 straight up, and 11-9 against the spread, and it breaks it down home road, favorite dog, etc. And you don't have to go scurrying through or Google everything. You got the information right there. So I'm able to use that information almost on every game when I need to take a look, because history matchups are important. Now, as far as this game goes, you had that great comeback last week by Buffalo in what was a high-scoring game. Buffalo showed some vulnerabilities. Obviously you're going up against Derrick Henry, 238 total yards allowed rushing in 29 rushing attempts. That's almost 8 yards per rush. A lot of it was Henry, but there were other guys who accounted for a decent amount there, including Lamar Jackson. My concern here, and maybe I'm going to look a little bit towards the over, is the Jets. They played well. They did defend the run against Pittsburgh. They only ran 20 times for 53 yards, so that's barely 2.5 yards per carry. And the Jets are known for their defense. And I wonder, though, what Buffalo's going to do against that defense that was vulnerable to some of the passing. Aaron Rodgers had a decent passing game. What was he, 22 for 30? That's pretty good. That's that's almost 70%. And I'm wondering if Josh Allen can take advantage of some of the things that the Steelers were able to do, which means that they might have some success against the Jets. At the same time, Buffalo clearly showed some vulnerabilities defensively against Baltimore. And I think the Jets have to enter this game, especially with Fields and Hall, who, we know is a pretty competent running back, had a good game last week, that they may be able to get their yards and their points against the Bills. I don't know that I'm going to call for the outright upset for the Jets. I do like the 6.5. I want to see if it goes up to 7, and I might still very well. Buffalo might make a good teaser play down, because yes, it is a division game, and they've got that division game next Thursday night, I believe it is, against Weaver as the new head coach of the Dolphins at home. So they'll be opening the season.
Andy makes the call.
with two of their three first games, division games, and of course the game last week was important. It's tough coming back after 4 days, but these guys are professionals. They're used to playing on 4 days rest. So I'm going to look for this to be a high-scoring game. So I'm looking over in this game, and I am looking to. I want to see if a 7 shows up on the Jets, and I probably will have Buffalo in a teaser somewhere. Although I'm a little bit more reluctant in this divisional matchup, given what Greg described at the start. The Jets are playing Buffalo so well the last few years at home.
Well, as Jim mentioned,
Andy, I wanted to say this. You're talking about a teaser. Of course, you have to be very careful about the prices of these teasers now, because some of the books are just killing you with the prices. But I would actually like to tease the Jets side and take a bigger price, because I actually think they have a chance to win
the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, the defense 100%. Last week was very strange for both sides.
Yeah.
The total in that game last week was 38 or 37.5, and they ended up with like 70 points.
One of the teams almost scored that much.
Yes.
And the reason it was not just because of the offenses. It was because both teams have good defenses. So it really didn't make any sense. This is to go back to what Andy was saying before. It's just 1 week. And sometimes teams just don't match up well with other teams, and sometimes they do. So I don't think the Steelers and the Jets, chances are I'd actually put a little bit of money on the fact that the Jets and Steelers won't give up more points than they gave up week 1 the rest of the season in any one.
Right.
And by the way, Mark, you may have this in the database, but you take a look at the total yards in this game. Pittsburgh, 271, the Jets, 394. So the Jets win the stats, but those kind of yardages don't suggest a game being played in the 60s, more like in the mid to upper 40s.
Yeah, you're talking about a divisional home dog here, guys, that comes off of a game that they played a lot better in than the scoreboard indicated. They won the yards, almost 100 yards in the contest, as Andy said, in the game here. And as you mentioned in your newsletter this week, Andy, outstanding newsletter. Once again, Andy hits on what all the key numbers are in college and pro football here. And we've been talking about 7
College
being
football. I mean, pro football.
Pro football, yes. And we're talking about what 7 means in this football game. Jim mentioned it opens up 8.5. It's down to 6.5, but it's juiced. So it likely will get to be 7. I think the public's going to be more to Buffalo than they are to the Jets.
It wouldn't be very expensive, Mark, at minus 115 to the high side to buy the 7.
Exactly right. You can buy 7 and make it a quarter and lay a quarter on the game.
Yeah.
So like that. One interesting stat here, I'm going to call this out from our newsletter. It was something I found in the database. Was like, wow, are you kidding me? New York Jets maybe have the best team trend stat working in the National Football League this week, in the fact that as a home dog against AFC teams, and that team has at least 1 win in the season, the Jets are 13-0 against the spread running.
No.
Okay.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I'll take that.
But Mark, that's almost as good as what you have in your write-up on the Carolina at Arizona game. That's a little tease for that's pretty remarkable stat there.
This is keep this in mind too. This is going to be the only road game that the Buffalo Bills are going to play until mid-October. And they travel to Atlanta.
Wow.
3 straight home games. And I think there's an international game in there maybe.
Which actually means that they don't leave the state of New York until mid-October, when they started the season.
Nice. Very good.
They're not going internationally or at all in that group?
No.
All right, guys, let's go over to an NFC North division battle, a black and blue division battle here. When the Chicago Bears visit Detroit this week, a little bit of a disappointing opening, as we talked at the beginning of the show, for the Chicago Bears in this football contest. The Detroit Lions also come in off that loss against Green Bay. 2 teams both hungry for victories. Which way are you going to look at this football game, Jim? Chicago and Detroit?
I don't feel, I'm just not comfortable with Caleb Williams. I just don't see the progression. I mean, he started 18 games in this league now. He's not really a rookie anymore. This is a guy that's got a lot of snaps. He doesn't see the field. When he's at the line of scrimmage, I don't feel like he's in command of what he's doing. Now, granted, the scripted plays in the beginning of the game, he looked pretty good. But you can't script the whole game. So after he went like 9 out of 10 on the first 10 plays that were scripted, he looked totally uncomfortable. He wasn't throwing. He was throwing the ball 6 feet before on the ground before the receivers. He has all the physical talents, but I don't see it. And I do believe Detroit is still a very well put together team. Started off bad, but this is a big spot for them to come back. And the line moved from 4.5 to 6 in most spots, I think, is the way I'm going to go. I'm going to go with the favorite here, Detroit.
Jim's going with the line move in the football game. Greg, what do you think this battle between the Lions and the Bears, which side of the game on the field are you going to be sitting?
Well, I think both of these teams are going to – this is one of the situations where I don't want to overanalyze them too early in the season, because I think Detroit's coaching staff, new coordinators need some time, especially the offense. And then on the other side, I think Caleb Williams is going to need some time with his offensive coordinator genius, even though I'm not a big fan at all of Caleb Williams, but I'm willing to give him time. So I do know that the Bears have played the Lions pretty tough recently in Detroit. So there's that. And because I don't know. I don't know if I can see Detroit early in the season. I think they're going to be a much better team as the season goes on. So I don't know if I could see them automatically week 2 turning things right back around and being the old Detroit Lions and blowing the Chicago Bears out. So I'm going to take points, even though I'm not touching the game because I wouldn't bet on the Bears because they're 14-25 against the spread in the last 39 games as a road dog. Detroit, meanwhile, has covered 11 of 12 off of a double-digit ATS loss. So that all says maybe I should be jumping on the Lions, but that's the reason I'm not even touching the game. But if my feet were to the fire, I'd actually take the Bears.
Andy, does it concern you that the Detroit Lions, I don't think people realize this, you go back their last 5 games are 1-4 straight up and against the spread. They've been kind of swirling since the end of last football season here. We did change coordinators for this Detroit football team this year. Are those factors that might continue this Detroit demise, or do we look for a U-turn starting this week?
Well, I'm going to go right back to your stat and logbook and take a look at the Detroit Lions. And if you go back to 2023, after each loss that they had, other than the season-ending loss, because that was the end of the season, if I'm reading these numbers correctly, the Lions are a perfect 7-0, both straight up and against the spread, off of a loss under Dan Campbell the last 2 seasons when they became a good team. Remember, Campbell started in 2021, Lions 3-13-1. Then they improved to 9-8 the next year, and then they had their big improvement in 2023, where they ended up going 13-5 or 12-5, and then lost at the end of the season in San Francisco. And last year, of course, they were 15-2 before they got eliminated in the playoffs. So under Campbell, they have been able to respond well, and I think sometimes that's more a factor to the head coach and getting his team prepared than it is with the offensive and defensive coordinators, although obviously they both had an impact. And of course, that's one of the subplots of this game with Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, now going back to Detroit. And of course, Aaron Glenn, the former defensive coordinator, certainly made a big statement about the Jets culture last week with that effort against Pittsburgh. So I'm inclined to play Detroit this week. We sometimes take a look at a lot of these different situations and different trends, etc. And one that I do like to rely on, and I think you do as well, Mark, is how do teams respond after a losing effort. The good teams seem to be able to realize, hey, we just lost an opportunity to pick up another win that we could have or should have had, depending upon whether they were favored or not. And let's refocus this week. And Dan Campbell, I think, gets the most out of his team. He's popular with the team. I think I was not surprised that they lost. Maybe that one-sided nature of the game last week, because I liked Green Bay last week. I had them, and I think the team responded extremely well when they were able to trade for Micah Parsons, because I think it told the rest of the Packers, hey, we're in a division with Detroit and Minnesota, teams that won 14 or 15 games last year. Management is going in to say that this is the year that we, the Packers, are going to join that group. We have the confidence that we can make a nice run for the playoffs, and I think the players responded extremely well. How long that little momentum carries over, I'm not sure, but I do think that Green Bay will be a factor, and I expect Detroit to rebound this week because they are, and to use a term, Mark, that you're very familiar with, they're stepping down in class.
Stepping down in class. Yeah.
One thing I'd like to say, I don't want to interrupt, but one thing I want to say about Detroit, I thought they were going to go to the Super Bowl last year. And then they have the cluster injuries on defense. And I mean a lot of players. And they got absolutely destroyed by Washington. But you can't overcome cluster injuries. When you lose 4 or 5 players on defense like they did.
Watch San Francisco the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Well, the good thing about San Francisco this week is they're playing New Orleans.
Yeah.
They might be able to get by that one. But the
that
other
adjustment of that line to 3 seems a little bit suspicious. I think that's a little bit of an overreaction considering the talent on the rest of the 49ers compared to
from 7 to 3 on that game. Yeah. Exactly.
Could be an ideal spot for Mac Jones to also impress in his debut with the 49ers this week.
Remember Kyle Shanahan wanted to draft Mac Jones.
Yes.
And
that was
he didn't get him.
Situation.
And now he's got him. Yeah. So
yeah, he also drafted Trey Lance.
Yeah, well, that was a
was that Shanahan or was that John Lynch?
Winner.
Was that Shanahan or John Lynch who made that determination?
Mark, when do you because when Andy brought up the history of the numbers for like Campbell, let's say Detroit loses this game or loses the spread, and we now have a couple of games where all of a sudden we're seeing a shift where you might say, okay, well, now that those hotshot coordinators are no longer there, do you have to change your mindset at all with some of the trends over the last few years with the Lions? Like when do you get to that point?
Well, without the coordinators being there, the deeper we get into the season, the more cohesive they're going to become with the new coordinators. And you're also going to be gaining value with Detroit if they're ending up not playing all that well. So you got value and you've got familiarity begin there with Detroit. So at some point, I'm going to get off this Detroit disdain wagon that I'm on and probably join them because I think there's going to be a lot of value with Detroit. I don't see as much value here with the Bears at +6.5 as I did with the Jets at +6.5. I think the Jets can play and the Bears can't. So I'm staying out of the game personally because I think there's more value, like I say, to the Jets in a division game than there are the Bears. Okay, guys, let's go over to another big game on the National Football League card. It's an NFC contest between the North and the South. Atlanta Falcons going to Minnesota to take on the Vikings, two teams coming in off opposite results last week. Jim, where do you see this game going, Atlanta and Minnesota?
When this line opened up, I actually almost pressed the button to take Atlanta +4.5. And I said, wait a minute, let me just see what happens in the rest of this game with Minnesota. And then Minnesota started to play that fourth quarter. And I said, oh, God, what does this mean? Now, of course, we're looking at 3.5. So I'm not playing it. But I will say this. I'm concerned about the kicking game for Atlanta. I know that this kicker is in the past has been very good, but last year he wasn't that solid. And they were thinking about getting a different kicker. Then last week, he had a 44-yarder to tie the game and go to overtime with Tampa. Now, Tampa played without their offensive line. They had a lot of injuries on that offensive line and had a wide receiver out as well. They still came back and won the game, which is remarkable how they did that. But be that as it may, I'm concerned about this kicking game. When you already have this question, you're in a game here where that kicking game, if he misses an extra point or you're just not going to overcome that. And now what am I doing? I'm taking 3.5 now, and I don't know if my kicker can make a field goal of 40 yards. So I don't know what to do with it. So I'm kind of just staying away.
By the way, in that game, there was a lot of money that came in on Atlanta on Sunday morning. Saturday night, Tampa Bay was a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite. I saw a lot of places in town, and I think a few offshore places. The game closed pick'em.
Wow. Take a look here, Greg. What do you think here goes on between these two teams? You have disparate results coming in from opposite teams. Is there value to the Atlanta Falcons in this football game because Minnesota won that game?
Not anymore. I thought at 4.5 there might have been value. Not at 3.5. That's obviously right there at 3. And I'm not even sure that line isn't more valuable now to the Vikings because I think the Vikings are a better team than Atlanta. They're at home. I'm not going to get into the whole who's more desperate because I think at 0-2, you're still okay. We got the extra game now. And teams can come back from 0-2. But right now it's about confidence. And Minnesota has it and Atlanta doesn't. And it's a carryover from last year. Atlanta wasn't able to win big games last year. And now it happened already in game 1 against Tampa Bay, the team they're trying to dethrone and the team that they've actually had a lot of success against recently. All of a sudden, that's a confident shot. Vikings, J.J. McCarthy, it's through the roof. The confidence level now of the kid and the whole team. And keep this in mind too. The Falcons are just 2-8 against the spread in their last 10 as a road dog. And overall, they're like the Bears. They're not a very good spread team. 27-41 with one tie in their last 69 games overall. So you want to make money. You're not betting the Atlanta Falcons. And these two teams have played the last 2 years. Believe it or not, the Vikings have beaten the Falcons both games and covered both games.
Well, I'm going to take the points with the Falcons here, guys. I think this is an ideal setup, and it comes that way because of what I've learned from our midweek alert statistical newsletter. And I think that's very, very important when you're handicapping games, whether you're a technical handicapper, a fundamental capper, you have a good feel for the game. It doesn't matter what your approach is, as long as you stick to your philosophy and stay in your lane. What I've learned from our Midweek Alert statistical newsletter is that teams, when you have a collision of two games where one team lost the game and won the yards by nearly 100, and the other team won the game but lost the yards, those are two inside-out results, and you're taking the dog here in Atlanta. That's, to me, the side I'll get to right away in a football game like this. And then you look at Atlanta's propensity. They play really, really well in the second game of the season, coming off a loss. They're 9-1 to the spread, the last 10 doing just that. I think there's plenty of good sides here for Atlanta, and I'm not surprised at all if they win this game.
Well, I'm going to take a look at Minnesota in this game for a number of reasons. I know a lot of what Mark said, does come true, especially with Atlanta. I go back to, has there been a team that has been more disappointing over the last 2-3 seasons, given the preseason hype, than the Atlanta Falcons? Last year, they were another fashionable team. They were favored by 4 at home against Pittsburgh on opening day, and they lost the game outright. And you take a look at Minnesota. Minnesota has shown to be a very solid team. Certainly, O'Connell in his last 4 years, he had that great season in 2022 when they won all those close games. They did drop off, as you would expect, a regression in 2023, and they go to 7-10, and then they bounce right back last year, and the team goes to 13-3 or 14-3, I think it was, and then of course they have the playoffs. They the game against the Rams in Phoenix. So Minnesota in many ways has done almost what Detroit has done, where they've come up in the last couple of years. They've been a very, very solid team going up against a team that, again, couldn't find a way to win last week. Jim mentioned the issue with the kicker. I talked before about the fact that Atlanta saw Tampa Bay score to make it 23-20 and missed the extra point, giving Atlanta an opportunity to at least send the game into overtime, and they couldn't do that with the kicker, etc. So Atlanta finds ways to not take advantage of opportunities, and as we saw in 2022, Minnesota was able to find ways to take advantage of opportunities, and they're a stronger team now, and I especially like the move that they made at the end of training camp by getting Thielen back to the Vikings, where he started his career, and of course, just imagine what this receiving corps is going to be like when Addison gets off that suspension.
I want to comment, the reply to one of the commenters here.
Sure.
John Putnam, he says, I'm with you, Jim, on Atlanta kicker. I had the over 42.5. A made field goal would have put it in overtime. You know what, John? I was in the same boat. I needed that kick to get it to overtime so I could go over the total, because he missed that and I lost the chance to go over. So I have a bad taste in my mouth from that.
Wasn't the final 23-20?
Yeah, but it was
43.
47 was the total.
Oh, okay, because the total we saw listed there was 42.5, so maybe that was an in-game total or something that got adjusted.
All right, guys, let's get to the game everybody is talking about this week, the elephant in the room. That would be the Eagles and the Chiefs.
Oh, I thought you meant Dolphins and the Patriots.
Well,
I was all prepared for that one.
I think they're going to really hit me, throw the Cleveland Browns in that mix too, Andy.
By the way, you tell me the Cincinnati Bengals are going to hold an opponent to 16 points, and I say, wow, finally a 21-point blowout win for the Bengals.
Unbelievable.
What does that game last week tell us? I'm not sure.
There's some problem brewing in Cincinnati here, guys. I don't need to state the obvious here, but they need to get their stuff together here real quick, or Zach Taylor could also be on this hot seat, the coaches list.
You're right.
Maybe the Dolphins and Bengals will make a trade for the two coaches.
Oh, that could be a nice, swap draft picks and swap coaches. That would be a disservice to both teams, I think.
Yeah, but at least Taylor's made the playoffs a couple of times.
Yes, he has.
Well, but McDaniel did a couple of years ago with the Dolphins.
All right, let's get into the Eagles and the Chiefs, guys, here. We mentioned last week that arguably the Baltimore-Buffalo game could have been a game of the year type play, a potential Super Bowl match or an AFC championship preview. And we see likely the same thing here, Philadelphia and Kansas City perhaps getting back to that Super Bowl. I'm going to start it off with you, Greg, and what your taste here on the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. Is Philadelphia vulnerable this year because they're maybe a little bit fat and satisfied for what they did? Is Kansas City hungry for the egg they laid? And they laid a dinosaur egg in that Super Bowl game against Philly last year.
Well,
What do you see
before I
happening
get
there?
started, do
Yeah.
you have any? I know you might get around to doing this at the end of this, but do you actually have any trends on Super Bowl rematches?
No, I really don't. Only because I can't in my database. I can look for them and find them like Andy does in the stat and logbook, and you can find. You can go back and
Yeah.
see things and piece them together. But my database doesn't allow me to tag it as a Super Bowl revenge, so I have to go kind of build that up
Okay.
in that sense.
Yeah, this is. I think we have to keep in mind. Look, not only will Philadelphia get their prized spitter defensive tackle back, which will be really important. Keeping in mind, though, the Eagles did win the game.
Man.
Yes, the Eagles.
Greg, that's the label of the week: prize spitter. I love it.
Oh my God, that was fantastic.
Yeah, keep in mind, and there is a game we're going to talk about in college football where another spitter was very important, instrumental in the outcome, actually, and that hurt a team. Didn't hurt the Eagles; they actually won the game, and it just shows you too. The college kids they replicate everything that goes on in the pros. Anyway, the Chiefs still have problems because of the fact that, talk about injuries. Finally, now are we starting to see the Chiefs have some injuries? We know the Niners have dealt with it, but the Chiefs have, even if they have injuries here and there, they haven't had the rash of injuries that other teams have had, which stumped any momentum that they could possibly have to go to another playoff Super Bowl run. And early on this season now, we knew Rice wasn't coming back for almost midseason. Now Worthy, nobody knows if he's even going to play this year. He's supposed to come back. He's rehabbing, but if that doesn't go well, he's going to have surgery, which means he's out for the year. That means they're relying on a rookie, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Hollywood Brown. And that's, I don't know if that's going to cut it. Also, I wasn't overly impressed with the Chiefs last week with the offensive line. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was anything special. But now they have to play this game against the Eagles where, like you said, there's going to be momentum, you would think. The place is going to be bonkers, revenge on their mind, that kind of thing. I don't know. I actually look at it because people, and I said this yesterday on the show, don't get fooled by the Chiefs being a 1.5-point home dog and think that you have to jump all over them, because how on earth, how can you not take the Chiefs? That's disrespectful to the Chiefs. When have they ever been a 1.5-point dog? Well, if you look at it, they've been a home dog twice, I think, in the last 5 years, and they've lost both games. So it doesn't mean anything. It actually meant more when they were a road dog. They were on a streak of 8 straight covers until they lost 2 covers late last year. So don't play the Chiefs just because of the line. That's no impact. But I just think the Eagles are a better team, and I think that they understand what's coming about here in this football game. So I'm actually going to take the Eagles. I'll take the Eagles to win this football game. Mark, you said in the beginning of the season, this is not going to be a good year for the Chiefs with the spread. Andy Reid doesn't do well in these circumstances after losing Super Bowls, and so far they're 0-1. I'll play that they're 0-2.
Jim, does it help or benefit the fact for Kansas City that they do have added rest here? They played that game in Brazil, so they have a couple of extra days to prepare for themselves, maybe heal the wounded per se. Does it benefit them that way in this contest? And are they a home dog because of those injuries? I'm sorry.
Logically, it would, but it is early in the season where fatigue really hasn't set in. Like they've been.
Yeah, but didn't Philadelphia play the night before? They played Thursday, and the Chiefs played on Friday in Brazil.
They had the same amount of rest, almost a little bit more rest, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah, a day extra. You're right on that.
Yeah, but they didn't have to travel as far. Brazil's a long trip. But
they somewhat of an edge to. The only negative rest factor is Philadelphia has to travel to this game.
There's been some studies, and from what I've seen, that the team that's had the rest advantage hasn't done that well over 30 some games. The other thing is, Mark, somebody asked earlier, what's the stat on Super Bowl winners and losers coming back and playing the next year? From what I've been told, the last 10 times it's happened, the team that won the Super Bowl won the rematch. So I don't have those stats, but that's what I've been told. Now, as far as this game is concerned, Philadelphia played without a star player against Dallas. Made Dallas look a little bit better because there was no pressure up the middle, and that's what Carter does. So if you have an offensive line problem, and this guy is a monster, he's a monster player. He's a great player. He didn't play it down in that game. And I think that's a big plus for Philadelphia. I don't really, revenge factor is obvious in this. They got crushed. They lost last week. You got an 0-1 team against a 1-0 team. That's a statistical advantage also. But, things changed. I just don't feel that comfortable with what I saw from Kansas City. Herbert picked them apart. I mean, they did not look like a championship team in that game. They didn't. And I know they've been on top. They, nine straight division winners, 5 out of 6 Super Bowls they've been in, and I just don't see it. I would like to say, oh, this is a great revenge play. I've got this home dog and it got the revenge factor, and it just looks too sweet and too easy. And I agree with that analysis, but I just can't put my money on it. I just don't feel comfortable.
Mike, what we saw last week also perhaps say more about the improvement that the Chargers have made in year 2 under Jim Harbaugh.
Could be. Could be. Absolutely.
I have not seen Spagnuolo's defense embarrassed like that since the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Yeah.
And by the way, the Chargers couldn't run the football. And so everything was really through the air, which was even more surprising. So
it's really surprising, yes.
Yeah, it's good that the Chiefs show that they can, play defense, at least in the run game. But
Chargers averaged under 4 yards per rush. They ran at 25
yeah, but
times.
The Chargers don't have Saquon Barkley either, so there's a difference there in quality run back. And
you want to go first, or should I go?
This is a much tougher game than I really want to get involved in. I will bet the game in game. I'll be watching it, and when I see some advantages, I will take advantage of that. There's some games I just can't. I can't bet them pre-flop. There's nothing there.
I think that there are a lot of advantages for Kansas City here. I don't know if you recall. I think if I recall, walking up to the post-game interview, Andy Reid had like a piece of paper and a pen, and I think he was circling this game right after that Super Bowl loss, because he didn't know when they were going to play. He just knew that they were going to host the Eagles at some point during this season. If this game were being played in November, I might feel more comfortable with Philadelphia, because I think, and it's sort of like Mark or Greg, maybe you both said it, I think Kansas City they're an aging team, and I think that as the season wears on, that age is going to show. We sort of saw it last year when they had so much difficulty winning games by margins as they had in previous years. And now, of course, it's almost the healthiest they're going to be all season. Yeah, I know about Worthy and all that, but even so, their injuries are only going to pile up more and more as the season goes on. And I think I've mentioned that maybe it was last week or one of the other weeks that since 2019, Kansas City's played 21 playoff games. That's basically a full season and a quarter of additional football, while most teams in the league, those who haven't made the playoffs in the last 6 years have played 6 full seasons. The other teams with occasional playoffs have played six full seasons and a fraction. And Kansas City's a full season ahead of that.
One of our posters is asking, are there stats about a team playing out of the country and then coming home and playing at home? Do they dominate? Do they play well? But don't they also get a bye week from taking that one trip?
I think some teams.
Yeah, back when the days in London started, yes, they did.
Was it Miami last year who declined to take the bye week after returning?
Yeah, they might have. Yeah, they get the choice.
But most teams take that bye week. And when you look at the mentality of Patrick Mahomes, he was thinking all season about how embarrassed he was about his performance and the team's performance in that Super Bowl. And he's been thinking of very little else other than making amends for it this season. And I think amends for that, especially off of the loss last week to the Chargers, which, as I said, maybe it says as much about the Chargers and less about the Chiefs. That Philadelphia, as I mentioned, against Dallas, they did have some defensive vulnerabilities that may have been, probably some of it were affected by the absence of Carter. I just can't pass up Kansas City here, given their long-term pedigree and their ability to play extremely well in key games, which doesn't necessarily mean just Super Bowls. They do lose to certain teams like Buffalo in the regular season, but when they play them in an important game, they usually come through, and that's usually late in the season in the playoffs. This is not quite a playoff game, but it might be the first of two meetings. Although I don't think Kansas City is going to make it to the Super Bowl this year.
Well, guys, if you believe in playoff revenge, you probably had this game circled as Andy mentioned. Andy Reid does from that Super Bowl loss last year. So you're waiting for the game to come about. And what happens when the game comes about? You're coming in off a loss, and the defending Super Bowl champion, comes in off the win. That's what you would call a perfect setup, if you could order up a game to that degree. You also take a look at this football game in this contest here at Andy Reid himself. How many times has he, when he's opened up 0-2 in the football season here, what has he done in game 3? Because if he loses this, he could end up in dire straits at 0-3 in the season. Well, if he loses this, he bounces back and wins 3 of the 4 games he's played in that particular role. So remember that next week if he doesn't get the win here. But I simply, for the life of me, cannot pass Patrick Mahomes taking points, especially when he took it on the chin from this guy last year, and also the fact that it's a Super Bowl champion that he's taking points from on his home field. Give me Kansas City in the football game with Andy, and we'll see exactly how this game shapes up on the playing field.
Yeah, and also as far as the Chiefs, before we wrap up NFL, we're going to talk college football for the remainder of the show, and that is, until Mahomes has success throwing the football down the field again. That was supposed to be the idea. Worthy might have been that player. Rashee Rice. They were going to have to bring it. Maybe Tyquan Thornton can be that guy. Until he can stretch the field again, he is not going to be that dangerous player he was a few years ago. Now, that doesn't mean he can't bail out games, win games, Patrick Mahomes style, like he's done still the last couple of years without being able to be successful throwing the ball down the field. It just means he's not going to be that incredible. The Chiefs will not have that incredible can't stop offense, which they have not had the last 2 years because they have not been able to complete the deep pass and stretch the field. And until they do that, I think you're always now going to have a chance to beat the Chiefs if you have a respectable team.
I also think that we may say Mahomes, knowing the presence of Carter, will emphasize sort of what Greg is talking about, but in a different sense. I think they may emphasize the quick release, quick pass, short game to minimize the success of Carter's ability to rush.
Yeah, they got to get Travis Kelce in the game. I mean, he was just, you would have thought that he would have been the one to have 10, or where was it? Marquise Brown had something like 18 targets or something like that. Yeah. And yet Travis Kelce had 3 catches. I don't know where that came from. Maybe the Chargers did a much better job of taking him out of the game, but I would expect
one that went for like 25 or 30 yards, I think, at some point.
Yeah, it was crazy. So maybe you'll see that, Andy. Maybe you'll see them going early and often to Kelce.
Well, guys, I've been trying to load up on my database here to find out Andy Reid's particulars and how he does in situations like this. I was expecting completely the opposite result that I just found. But Andy Reid in game 2 off a season-opening loss is just terrible. When he's been at home in game 2, he's just 2-7 to the spread. That's the bad news. The good news
is that with Kansas City, or is
that's with both Kansas City and Philadelphia both. Okay.
So we're talking like what, 20 seasons worth?
Yes. But he's also, that's at home, but he's been the favorite in those particular football games all but one time. So this is the rare time he does take the points as the dog. We can talk this game till the cows come home. It's going to end up being, I think, must-view TV. I don't know if it's going to get.
I like Kansas City, but I wouldn't be surprised if Philadelphia wins. I don't think anyone would be.
I'm hearing you, Jim. I know you got to get out of here. Any closing thoughts you have? I know you're probably heading back to Dom DeMarco's just for the pizza.
Well, no, I'm gonna give it up for a day. You can't go there every day. I gave him 200 pounds. But I know you're heading into the college thing, and I'm not involved. But the question I would ask, maybe you'll answer it when I'm off air here. The NIL,
yes,
and the portal transfers. How much is that affecting your handicapping in the colleges so far this year?
Well, that's a great question, because we've had to really put Band-Aids on everything we're doing. We're trying to assess how these teams look now with these new players that they've purchased. And it's the world we live in. We can't do anything other than that. It's the cards we're dealt. We have to accept them.
Correct. I'll tell you what, there's a very interesting game tomorrow that involves something like that. Is the game between Duke and Tulane, where the Duke quarterback voluntarily left Tulane where he was successful, and they asked him why. He said, "Well, I wanted to play in a conference where the competition is better."
Oh,
I don't think now the Tulane coach had no hard feelings, but you have to believe that he was basically taking a swipe at the at Tulane's what is it, the American Athletic Conference, to go over to the ACC, and they're going to host Tulane's. I think a very slight favorite at home tomorrow on Saturday. I'll be interested to see, but that's one of the things that you do have to deal
well, to
with
answer your
these
question,
NILs and
Jim,
these. You used to have to sometimes deal with. Yeah,
I say to
go ahead.
answer your question, Jim, the thing I have the most difficulty with initially here is dealing with the group of 5 teams. The Power 4 conferences, they steal these players, the better players, and they just plug them in and they go with them. But the group of 5 guys that lose these guys, they're really terribly depth shy. And you end up you find the Boise States or the Memphises and those teams that kind of find their way to the top of the pack because they do a better job of recruiting than other group of 5 programs do. So that's the assessment I have, is how bad can these group of 5 teams actually be after they've been raped by
And
the big boys?
the other
I,
thing
th-
is
I
that
think you're gonna have to. I think you're gonna have to split it down. Make 2 different levels of play because they can't compete. There's just
No.
no way they can compete.
No,
I think
they
what
can't.
we used to be that maybe you would have 2, possibly 3 key players transfer from or to a team each year. Now those are double-digit numbers where you're getting guys who you're bringing in as starters. I said this a number of years ago, and I'm going to maintain it, that 20 years from now, we will see a total colleges will no longer have student athletes playing football. They will hire football players to play football under the logo. I'm serious, and I'll tell you, when you think about it, it makes sense because we're really because college football is becoming a professional sport at the level, certainly in basketball and football. What you're doing, by the way, let's use Ohio State as an example. Let's say you have 100 football players on your overall roster, and 80 of them are there to play football, and 20 of them are there to get an education, and they don't get to play football after their career's over, but they played in college and they got a scholarship. Well, if you do what I'm suggesting they're doing and basically just rent out or buy athletes, you're opening up 80 positions for a student who wants to go and get an Ohio State education. That's going to waste if you're giving it to a football player who's there just to play football.
Hey, Jim, let me throw this at you before you go, and I know you got to get going here. We're going to go into the college football, and a part I'm doing every week this week is called just saying what I heard and what I thought and what I learned from my database. And this is something that I did last week, and you're talking about the group of 5 teams that are stripped naked playing against the Power 4 guys. Well, last week, South Florida beat Florida as an 18-point dog. A monster win for a group of 5 team against a Power 5 guy. That was my big college football game of the week, and they win the game straight up. Was I surprised? Absolutely, I was surprised. It was nice to see them win the game. But what you had working in that contest, and this is the one thing I'd leave you with, Jim, here, is these college football teams, these group of 5 guys that are playing the big boys. The first thing I'm always looking for is what I call the redheaded stepchild theory or thought, where you take a team like South Florida, who is a redheaded stepchild to the big boys in the state, Florida State, Miami, Florida last week. You almost always get your best effort from teams like that.
Because you're getting those leftovers that can't make the rosters of Florida, Florida State, Miami, and yet are very, very good football players.
Or they were risked by those programs and recruited.
And they also played against these other kids in high school.
Yeah, their motivation has to be through the roof. There's no question about that.
Unquestionably.
Before I leave, I keep reading these posts and I like to reply to them because they go through the trouble. If Dak Prescott exploited the Eagles secondary, I think Mahomes would be able to do as well. I would only answer this way. I agree, except
the Jalen Carter thing.
Prescott has better wide receivers. Even though they're not a great team, they have great wide receivers. And Dak's not a bad quarterback. And Carter wasn't there to put the pressure on. He is going to be there. And that is a monster, especially after this guy just paid. He got suspended for 1 game, which he missed that game. And he had to pay $57,000 in a fine. He's probably pissed off. I don't want that guy to get pissed off.
I think that's a lot of the reason that this game got down to a pick 'em at a certain time and went up to Philadelphia, just because of the fact that it was reassessed that Jalen Carter is going to be in that lineup.
That's right.
As long as he doesn't spit on anybody,
The spitter.
it could happen.
I heard he's wearing a
Or
mask.
at least if the official doesn't see it.
Yeah, that's right.